So thanks, y'all. I'm glad I get to talk about this for 30 minutes or less. My goal is to talk for maybe about 20 or 25 minutes and then open the floor up for questions you might have. So, to preface this and give you some context, I've been doing some work with the company that I am employed by in this realm of measuring DevOps. And I want to make the context I want to give you and the differentiation I want to make as opposed to what anybody might read in the DevOps handbook, which has a lot of great information, so please read it, is where we have found that there's some lacking information or where there's some potential to help people out is where you need to be able to measure, monitor, and improve on process. And so I work at version 1. Everybody, or most people that know who version 1 is, knows that we're very heavy on the agile planning stuff. And so when we started to marry agile stuff to DevOps stuff, we wanted to be able to connect the dots between delivering code to planning. So that's my context. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm the DevOps guru there. I'm a DevOps coach and consultant. My day job is to promote DevOps. I just get to work with a really cool company and promote their products as well. This is not a product promotion exercise. This is just about the idea of measuring DevOps. So I have about 10 years of experience so far. Again, very passionate about DevOps. I really want it to be something that transcends just the technical practices of automation and improvement. There's a lot of talk right now about how DevOps can improve culture. Diversity is a really big topic. I know that we have an Ignite talk today about it, which is going to be awesome. I saw that in DC. It was good there. And so DevOps, awesome. It excites me. I hope that it excites you too. Okay, so as I mentioned, my context is, and I like to use my Bitmoji. I'm a millennial. Really like doing selfies, groupies, Bitmoji. They're fun. Anyway, so DevOps was missing something. The reason that I got into this, it's been 18 months as I mentioned. The biggest thing that got me here was I saw a product demo and heard an idea about measuring DevOps, about trying to marry agile planning or process planning, or product planning, whatever you want to call it, whether you're agile, doesn't matter, or waterfall, it doesn't matter. But trying to make sure that the people who are in charge of building value in a business, and the people who are helping to plan work so that you can do something as a developer or that you have something to do as an operations person, they need to know that the work that you're doing is valuable. And so we've been on this endeavor to help provide this data to help connect dots, right? So let's set some more context. Whoa, that went way too fast. So the definition of DevOps, I like the definition of DevOps that is in the DevOps handbook, just in case you haven't heard that one. It is the emerging professional movement that advocates a collaborative working relationship between the development and IT operations teams, resulting in the fast flow of planned work, i.e. high deploy rates, while simultaneously increasing the reliability, stability, resilience, and security of the production environment. And so I use that definition because it makes a lot of sense. I think it helps bring home what DevOps is. The graphic up here is just something I put together in PowerPoint. Talking about one team, that doesn't give a very clear picture in my opinion. It's talking about an organization that has a bunch of cross-functional teams that really try to work together to provide value. Remember, one of the biggest things that I got out of the DevOps handbook was, and something I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, was that the people that have been successful with DevOps, the organizations that have been successful with DevOps, are more interested in moving fast than they are in reducing cost. So just keep that in mind, something to think about. And when I like to talk about DevOps, who doesn't want the whole enchilada? Who here doesn't like enchiladas? Why can't you bake your cake and eat it too? Why can't you have the best of both worlds? Why can't you set processes up and have metrics that help prove that you as an individual or a group as a team can make your organization better. And we all know that as we talk about DevOps, one of the founding principles is that we must continuously improve. Because if we don't continuously improve, or we're not focused on continuously improving, the opposite is chaos. You're moving one way or the other. And the next slide makes this very clear. So as a coach and consultant, I often get thrown into the mix where organizations are starting DevOps, they're hearing about DevOps, they've been in the throes of DevOps, and leadership, and maybe even some of the people that are implementing DevOps, feel like they're in a train yard, they have no idea how to drive a train, they have no idea how to change the tracks, but they have to deliver something massive from the beginning to the end. And so it's really great to be able to give them a framework so that they can untangle the tracks or learn how to do things that they need to do to be able to deliver better quality code or products. The other thing that I find with organizations that I get to work with is instead of DevOps being this big ivory tower of everything working well and there's a prescriptive way to be successful, it's more like organized chaos, okay? Because there's so much material out there to read, there's so many stories that you might hear about who did what to be successful, but a DevOps story is your story. It's a story about how you make your environment and your organization successful. And so another thing to keep in mind here. So I mentioned a few of these things, right? So our goal, as we promoted being able to measure process and improve process, has been to talk about enhancing telemetry, because telemetry is, again, one of these founding things that makes DevOps important. It's something that helps teams improve the way that they handle problems and the way that they produce products. The second bullet point there is continuous feedback, no scorecards, right? In the name of DevOps culture transformations, I often, we have to coach people how to use metrics. I want to hit myself with the mic because I have to do that, but why do I have to tell people that metrics aren't really a scoreboard for how you're doing? You're supposed to use them for improvement. Like if you don't have good metrics, the question should be why. The question shouldn't be trying to do a root cause analysis, or the process is not trying to do a root cause analysis to blame a person. Why did that person make a mistake? Why did that process not work? Why? And finally, I mentioned this already, investing in value, not reduction in cost. We have to focus on speed. Obviously, you don't want to focus on speed on your most valuable project when you're just starting a DevOps transformation, but you want to find some place that you can make an investment and you can go faster and you can show an organization that might be really slow how to transition. All right. So I have a hypothesis. I think that with these metrics, we can go from that organized chaos that I talked about in DevOps, and another disclaimer, not everybody's got organized chaos, but a lot of you do, or a lot of you haven't started. And what we want to be able to say is we want to give you the metrics that provide you feedback so that you can invest in the things that you need as a team. Most importantly, especially from a process perspective, like if you're a developer, or if you're a product owner, or if you're a scrum master, or if you're a leader of those product teams, how do you know that you need more people? How do you know that you need more tools? How do you know that you need more training, right? Some of you probably have had those conversations with managers or as managers, and you can't prove that you need all this stuff. Well, we believe that you can if you're measuring the right things. So, first question that I'd like to ask, and I'll answer, is how can you increase the quality of your process? All right, pardon the bad drawing, but we have, this is typical for DevOps. We always say we have to be able to identify bottlenecks and poor quality. They typically go hand in hand, bottlenecks and poor quality, but what we really want to be able to do is a few things. What this slide illustrates is that over the course of what we'll call a value stream, so from ideation all the way to operation, you have phases of that value stream that happen. You have development, you have testing, you have deployment, you have monitoring, you have blah, 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 whatever it might be. So we have to identify those. They have to be very clear. We have to know what those phases are so that we can try to improve them, okay? Then we have the notion of lead time, all right? So lead time is not only, we believe, if you can calculate lead time across that value stream from ideation to operation, you can calculate the lead time in phase. So if we are not doing continuous delivery, if we can't release small batch sizes or one batch size from ideation to production, we have to be able to measure the lead time in phase so that we know which phases may need improvement. And if we know what lead time is in each phase, we can try to also measure efficiency. So how much of that time in a phase is spent actually doing something as opposed to your phase just sitting and doing nothing. So for instance, some research out there shows, I can't remember what it is, but I know it's in a white paper. I wish I had written it down. Most enterprise software, this might be in the DevOps handbook, most enterprise software spends 80 to 90% of the time that it's time in development sitting on a shelf waiting to be released. Okay? So that's where we're coming from and what we're trying to help people fix. So the second question is, how can you accelerate delivery? Because your manager keeps asking. Okay? So again, phases of maturity are here. Over the course of time, I need to be able to track business value across that value stream, right? So if I know what my business value is, and I'm going to define it here as a work item or a backlog item or a feature, all right? If we know what those are, and we can associate those work items to source code commits, and I can track them across the value stream, I can then prove the cycle time of how often or how quickly we're releasing all those pieces of software. And so over the course of time, as you've identified the bottlenecks from question one, and you've started to fix your process, or you get more people, or you get trained to do more automated testing, you can start to prove that you are becoming more valuable as a team to that leader who's telling you, hey, we need to move faster. All right. And the third question, are you confident about delivering your product? I had a few interesting conversations yesterday in the happy hour and the speaker dinner about how some organizations are moving away from change control, where a leader has to sign the dotted line or click the button to be able to deliver code, because the leader always does it because they always trust that their team is doing their best job, right? So, I think, or we believe that you still want to know what inherent risk there is in code. And so if you can associate a commit and the files behind it to any defects that are created in a system of record, you can begin to show trends as to which parts of your code are fragile, right? Now, SonarQube, I'm sure some of you use it. SonarQube is very good at showing you on a file or a line-by-line basis where your issues may be. What we try to do is we try to correlate that data into a release or into a deployment, because you might not have touched all the code in your application, right? So you can see with SonarQube a dashboard that shows you code complexity, how much code you haven't tested, how well your unit tests are running, and all that stuff, right? But at the same time, it doesn't really show you, if you're looking at version 1.3.2.1 of your product, how much of that particular part of your product was in that, were those metrics, or what were the metrics around that in that dashboard? So again, what we're trying to do here is correlate the data so that you know specifically based on this particular release or a set of releases how risky they might be. All right? And we do that, or you can do that, by associating code commits to your work items. All right, fourth question. How do you improve compliance? So the compliance, audit and compliance stuff is really big for the customers we work with because they're highly regulated, or a good portion of them are. So they have to follow Sarbanes-Oxley. They have auditors that come in and make sure that that the company is following their own process, which is really weird in my opinion. But yeah, so when we talk about compliance, we talk about one of the parts of the process that's most often just left to the end. So story is it's a conglomeration of a bunch of people, right? So you may be part of a company that has to do this, but we were at the Agile conference a few weeks ago, and a group of guys from one of our government entities comes up and starts asking us about our products, and we get out of the product discussion and start talking about compliance. We start talking about DevOps, and they were like, "Yeah, we have this. We're really fast from development to testing to deployment, but when we get to the point where we need to release our code to our end users, we spend 2 weeks putting together all of the audit information for who changed what files were changed, who approved this stuff, who approved that stuff. 2 weeks. 2 weeks where the development team, these guys with the development team, could be spending that 2 weeks building new features into their software. Anybody here have to deal with that? Okay, right. So what if, and this isn't unique to any product out there, but what if you began to build into your process touch points where you're gathering that information? Maybe it's part of your commit. Maybe it's part of any documentation that you're keeping in GitHub or your source control system. Maybe it's part of a process that you build where you're gathering people's approvals or testing, checkpoints, so that you don't have to wait until the very end to put all the data together. It's all in one place. We think that's a key component to making sure that you move faster. All right, so I just went over 4 questions. That's why there's 4 components. And so these are the 4 things that we think of that we promote. We talk about DevOps and how you can improve the performance of your DevOps machine. So there's performance management, value stream orchestration, compliance and audit, and release automation. And I'll go over those 4 real quick. We talk about performance management. We're talking about improving, or at least being able to measure the flow of work through the system, right? So if you want to improve flow, and I think the Phoenix project does a really good job of trying to illustrate this. If you want to improve flow, you have to improve the single constraint in your development process or your product value stream, right? What I really typically find though is, as a consultant, we get a lot of questions about what tools to use, about what to automate and what to do with certain things. And the product teams don't often think at a system level, right? They don't think big picture, so don't get caught in that. And where I want to go there is, they get caught up trying to automate anything that they can touch, but that just kicks the bottleneck further to the right? That just kicks release. There's still release pain for operations. If they don't know what's in a release, they don't know how to support it. If the testers don't know what's in a release, they don't know how to test it. So improving flow is about improving the constraint in the process. Okay. Value stream orchestration, all right? And I'm going to get into a how real quick in a minute. I've still got a few minutes. When you start to try to, focus on these 4 key components of improvement, value stream orchestration is key, right? So I just talked about system thinking. I just talked about stories that I've heard of development teams really only focusing on, accepting a story, doing their work, checking it in, writing their unit tests, and passing it off to the next team, whatever that might be. And that does not promote a unified thought process or a unified systems thinking process where they should be taking any chaos and guessing of teams external to them and providing and figuring out how to provide strategy and value so that they can all improve the organization. All right. Now, compliance and audit. Obviously, I mentioned that we need to create processes that allow compliance and audit to be taken live, so that when we get to the end of the process, you don't have to spend the 2 weeks. You've already done all the work up to the point that you need to release, and so somebody just has to say, boom, release our code. We know we're good. We follow Sarbanes-Oxley. Right? But it takes a lot to get up to that point, and you have to be able to get InfoSec and QA and ops. You have to be able to get everybody on the same page to be able to figure that out. So start small. Don't scare them. All right. And then release automation. This is something that the DevOps handbook touches on quite well. But in order to get to the point where you're doing continuous delivery, where you're being able to get continuous feedback, you're doing release automation. What's really interesting here is that if you're not improving on release automation, that's probably the biggest pain point for a product team, at least that I see, where everything has to get worked on, and this doesn't even contain or doesn't even include the compliance and audit issues that we've talked about. But there's a release manager at the end of the process who has no visibility into what's being released, and they have to figure out the compliance piece. So getting them part of the game and figuring out release automation makes, from our perspective, it's the last bottleneck that needs to be fixed. I'll give you a few examples of things you may be able to do. Okay, so one thing is, there's a really good book Mark Schwartz wrote. It was promoted last year at the DevOps Summit, Enterprise Summit. It's called The Art of Business Value. It is less than 100 pages. It is really easy to read, and it is thought-provoking. I encourage everyone here to read it, regardless of the role that you're in. But essentially what he said is, when we talk about the value of things that we're delivering, we need to define it. And it's different for each team. It's different for each organization, but it needs to be defined, and you need to understand it, okay? That's a how. Define business value. Visualize your value stream. So this is one of the most fun things I get to do as a coach, is go to an organization and say, before we touch a keyboard, we are going to talk about your value stream. We're going to document every part of the process. What do you do after the commit that gets your code out to the end user? What metrics do you want to capture? In addition to the other stuff that we've already talked about, sometimes there's things that they want to capture. What controls do we need to put in place so we're doing real-time auditing compliance? We get to tell them how to do what we think they should do, and this is the first step. And the first thing that is said after this exercise every single time, and this is an exercise across ideation and operations, everybody's involved, they say, wow, we didn't know we did this much work. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me. Okay? And Yoda says, whatever those metrics are that you want to improve, or whatever the things are that you want to improve, find the metrics that will tell you the story that you need to tell, and agree on them up front, so that you have a goal in it. And if you do all of that, your DevOps transformation might just be epic. And I'm done.